Hello everybody and welcome back. It has been a minute. I apologize for the hiatus here, but we are coming back into the Pokemon 2026 season, leading off with Regulation H. The first tournaments of that, at least the official regional events, will be held in the beginning of September. With that, I want to go ahead, take us back to Regulation H of the past, all the way back in fall of last year, almost a full year ago when we first got to see it. And we're going to go ahead and start with probably the most exciting Regulation H tournament, a little bit in the middle of the season when a lot of the stuff has been solved and things are very exciting, with Toronto. And this is going to be technically round one streamed, but Swiss round two here between Joseph Ugarte and Collin Heier. The awesome thing about Regulation H, you don't have any restricted Pokemon, but it lends itself to a ton more creativity because you also don't have your stuff like a Landorus or Thundurus, as well as your Fluttermanes. The Paradox Pokemon are not allowed. And so here we have Garchomp, Jumpluff, Torkoal, Dragonite, Kingambit, and Hisuian Typhlosion here. Joseph's team taking a huge advantage out of the sun here. The Jumpluff, Torkoal, and Hisuian Typhlosion making for a phenomenal core. Notably, that is an Eject Pack Torkoal with Helping Hand, Burning Jealousy, and then Overheat and Protect, much more standard. Garchomp here is Rough Skin with Life Orb, Terra Fire, Dragon Claw, Stomp, Cancer, Earthquake, and Protect. Jumpluff here is Covert Cloak, Leaf Storm, Sleep Powder, Encore, and Tailwind. Definitely more supportive, but that Leaf Storm can do quite a bit of damage here. Dragonite is something that kind of evolved along with Regulation H. Scale Shot, Extreme Speed, Ice Spinner, and Protect, along with that Loaded Dice and Terra Fairy. This thing can pump out a ton of damage, as well as providing a little bit of support with that Ice Spinner. Sometimes you might see Tailwind on it or Haze, but Ice Spinner, Extreme Speed, Scale Shot, and Protect are pretty standard. Kingambit here, a huge heavy hitter when you don't have other heavy hitter restricteds to deal with. Iron Head, Sucker Punch, Assurance, and Low Kick. Assault Vest with the Terra Flying, a great Pokemon in a potential Trick Room matchup if that's what you're up against. And then Hisuian Typhlosion here, very similar to a potential Torkoal that we saw in other regulations, but this is Choice Specs with Eruption, Shadow Ball, Heat Wave, and Overheat, trying to do as much damage as possible. This thing can hit like an absolute truck as long as it is left unscathed. That is the goal of Joseph's game here. On the other side, though, we have Collin here with the Goldango, Tyranitar, Amoonguss, Incineroar, Kilowattrel, and Garchomp. A pretty standard set overall, except that Kilowattrel, Thunderbolt, Air Slash, Tailwind, Protect. It has competitive and covert cloak, so it likes to take those Intimidates, as well as any other stat drops. And then that Tailwind can be very, very impactful. It's super speedy Pokemon. Terra Fairy to round it out. Garchomp on the bottom right here, very, very similar. Rough Skin, Life Orb, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, Stomping Tantrum, and Protect here. Incineroar for Collin does have the safety goggles, Fake Out, Flare Blitz, Knockoff, and Parting Shot is the basic standardized moveset here. Amoonguss next to it with the Citrus Berry, Spore, Rage Powder, Pollen Puff, and Protect. I mean, these two are just a dynamic duo, and they have been since they've both come out. Goldango is the star of the show here with Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Nasty Plot, and Protect. The Metal Coat here boosting up that Make It Rain damage without having to sacrifice too much other stuff. Terra Flying, notable to avoid any potential ground type shenanigans, such as an Earthquake from a Garchomp on the other side, or to pair up with your own Garchomp to avoid an Earthquake. Tyranitar as well has his Terra Flying here. This is a super standard Tyranitar set as well. The Assault Vest, Rock Slide, Knockoff, Low Kick, and Terra Blast to take advantage of that Terra Flying. It can turn a lot of Tyranitar's worst matchups, like against Rillaboom or even Amoonguss, into very, very favorable ones because that Terra Blast, if the Tyranitar is trained offensively, and in this regulation, usually it's going to have one of the highest attack stats in this metagame, can do a lot of damage. So the big things here that Ugarte and here are both going to be looking for are how are you going to position your weather setters. Tyranitar is incredibly impactful here because of Rock Slide up against the Torkoal and Hisuian Typhlosion. Those fire types really do not want to take it, and the Terra Flying as well can help avoid a lot of the damage that the Garchomp can put out. The Goldango is going to be a big sweeper. On the other side for Ugarte, you have the Hisuian Typhlosion, which is the center of your game plan along with the Dragonite. You have some big damage dealers. Kingambit is quite risky because of both the Tyranitar and the Incineroar and the Garchomp. So for Joseph, what I'm really looking for here, what I'm expecting to see is a speedy team here. Garchomp, Jumpluff, Torkoal to boost up the Jumpluff speed potentially, although Jumpluff is pretty fast on its own, and then either Hisuian Typhlosion or the Dragonite. I don't think we're going to see the Kingambit here, but what Joe has to do is take out that Goldango. That is enemy number one. Goldango is, I believe, the most used Pokemon in this regulation. I don't know what it is at this tournament, but it is one of the most popular. And Collin leads with it alongside the Garchomp. And for Joe here, actually bringing in the Kingambit, it does do quite a lot with a Sucker Punch, but the Jumpluff is here as well. So Tailwind, very impactful here, should be faster than both of Collin's Pokemon. And Sleep Powder comes through. Garchomp avoids the attack, though, A little bit unlucky for Joe to start things off, but that's how it goes. Stomping Tantrum, Kingambit does survive it, and Garchomp loses a little HP from the Life Orb. Make It Rain comes through. This should be enough to take out the Kingambit, and Jumpluff goes down to half HP here. So Joseph just not getting anything out of this turn. And Kingambit, that's exactly what I was worried about before, is that it's just going to be too slow to make anything happen. If Joseph does land that Sleep Powder, the turn goes very, very differently, but I'm also a little bit surprised to not have seen that Sucker Punch. Now, Joseph brings out his own Garchomp, but he's already down a Pokemon here. Jumpluff has not gotten a Tailwind up. It still can, if it wants to get your Garchomp moving first, but even then, this Goldengo, even at -1, is going to be doing a lot of damage. You might be able to take out the opposing Garchomp, but Goldengo is still going to hit like a truck. So, if Joseph wants to try to get another Sleep Powder off, that could be the name of the game here, but Collin could also go for a Terra. We do see the switch out for Collin here. Garchomp going out, and Incineroar coming in. This is not a clear Amulet Garchomp, so this Intimidate is going to be putting in at least a little bit of work. Again, Earthquake is certainly an option for Joseph here. That'll do quite a bit of damage across the board, but again, if we see the Terastallization from Collin, that Goldengo is going to be feeling absolutely fine, and that is exactly what we see. The Terra Flying is going to avoid any potential ground type moves that Joseph wants to try to throw out. Garchomp does put pressure on a Collin that does force the Terra out, but I don't think you feel too bad about it, and Goldengo avoids the Leaf Storm. This Jumpluff has not been able to land an attack. Dragon Claw takes out about a third of Goldengo's HP. Even with an Intimidate, it probably only would have done a little bit over, or without the Intimidate, it probably only would have done a little bit over half, and now that Goldengo is sitting at a +1. Fake Out Pressure is alive with this Incineroar, and Jumpluff just hasn't been doing anything. If you are Collin, you're feeling pretty good about it. You can just fake out the Garchomp if you really, really want to, and then that leaves Goldengo in a very sweet spot to just go for another Make It Rain. Incineroar will take potentially rough skin damage, but no, the Protect comes through from Joseph here, trying to keep it as safe as possible. Dragonite is coming in into the Jumpluff slot. Fake Out does go into the protected Garchomp here, and I'm interested what the Goldengo is going to go for. Collin could have been very bold. No, it is just going to be the Shadow Ball here. Potentially a nasty plot there might have sealed the deal, but Shadow Ball does go into the Dragonite, breaks its, I believe it is a multi-scale. I don't remember if it was multi-scale or inner focus, but if it was multi-scale, that's going to do quite a bit, and that might just be enough that a Make It Rain will take it down. Dragonite should be a little bit faster. At the very least, Extreme Speed is going to get some damage onto the Goldengo, but not enough. Dragon Claw does get to come through from the Garchomp. That is enough to take out the Goldengo. We saw that from before. Incineroar now the last one on the, or not, well, the last one on the field for Collin to do anything. So Joseph with these speedy dragon types is feeling pretty strong here. We're either going to see a knockoff or a parting shot from this Incineroar. It is going to be that parting shot going into the Dragonite. So both of Joseph's dragons here are at -1, and Jumpluff is the only thing in the back. It'd be very, very risky for either of these Pokemon to try to switch out into it. So if you are Joseph, it feels like you probably have to try to win the game with these two dragons. Both being at -1 though really, really hurts. Collin's Garchomp does come out. It already has a little bit of chip damage on it as well. Might be going down to some speed ties, but Incineroar gets to make its way back out. That puts both these dragons at -2. Unless Joseph can get some really, really big predictions in to try to swap these Pokemon out, it's going to be a very, very tough move up through the rest of this game. We do see him considering protecting and swapping the Jumpluff in. Garchomp goes out, Jumpluff comes in. This is where you might just have to try to sacrifice something here. And if you're Joseph, Joseph is saying, okay, I would rather have my Garchomp be at a full attack stat than the Dragonite. Garchomp is the path to victory here. Can definitely understand that. Can land a super effective Earthquake on a potential Incineroar. Dragon Claw with a critical hit from Collin does take out the Jumpluff. I don't know that that necessarily mattered. Again, this is a full statted Life Orb Garchomp here. This thing is quite deadly. Flare Blitz is just going to go into the Protect on the Dragonite here, and if that had potentially been a double up, which I could have seen, then Collin would have taken out that slot. Anyways, Garchomp gets to come back in for Joseph here. It's going to be able to do a decent amount of damage to any of these Pokemon. Earthquake here is a relatively decent option. You're not going to be hitting your own Dragonite, but the spread move might just not do enough. Ice Spinner against the opposing Garchomp could be big. That 4x super effective could help to overcome the -2 to the attack stat. But if you're Collin, I think you're in a really good spot here. We still don't know Pokemon at number 4, but with an Incineroar and a Garchomp on the field up against a -2 Dragonite and a regular Garchomp, I don't know. I think I would take Collin's position, even if this was a 2v2. Again, you still have to contend with the Earthquake, but if you have an Earthquake of your own or a Dragon Claw of your own, you're feeling pretty good. And instead, Collin just withdraws the Incineroar, doesn't want it to go down quite yet, wants to get some more Intimidates out, and we see Tyranitar make its way onto the field here. this is very interesting. It doesn't have Terra Flying, so it's not going to be able to avoid any of these ground type moves, but it does have some additional damage that it can throw out. And again, that'll allow Incineroar to make its way back onto the field. We do see the Terra Fairy come out of the Dragonite for Joseph here. A little bit more of a defensive terrestrialization. A lot of times you might see Terra Normal to boost up the extreme speed damage, but this is going to be just trying to resist as much as possible. Stomping Tantrum comes through, does over half to Joseph's Garchomp here. The Rough Skin does come through along with the Life Orb. That's going to put Collin's Garchomp down to about half HP. Dragon Claw is more than enough with that super effective damage. Joseph's Garchomp is going to be taken down to about 30 HP though. I believe a little bit less than that. And now you also have to contend with Fake Out coming out of Collin's Incineroar. Scale Shot comes through. This is going to do a decent amount, but no, Tyranitar avoids the attack. These missed attacks from Joseph have been absolutely painful. Even that Scale Shot there might have been enough to close out this game if it's able to hit. I don't know if close out, but at least does a lot to the Tyranitar. And now Garchomp sitting at 10 HP is going to be forced to protect. Dragonite is in a really, really poor spot. It's going to have to try to do, it can try to do something here. Again, I believe it is multi-scale, so it is susceptible to a potential Fake Out, but if you're Collin here, it is just too much of a risk to not Fake Out into the Garchomp. You know it's going to protect here. You could go for the gamble, though. You could go for the guess and go for a Flare Blitz into the Dragonite, but Joseph just goes for the double protect here. There is not going to be any Sandstorm chip on the opposing Incineroar thanks to the safety goggles, so all this does is make sure for Joseph that he is not worried about Fake Out taking out Garchomp. Rock Slide does come through. Again, as long as that hits, it's going to take out the Garchomp. The Dragonite is no longer weak to it, so I don't know if it'll take it out outright. Multi-scale definitely does a lot of work there, but we do see a little bit more chip damage onto Garchomp. All right, now the question is, will Extreme Speed or Scale Shot come through? And if it's Scale Shot, will it hit and will it do enough damage to matter? Joseph here is going to be going for the Earthquake on the Garchomp. Garchomp is going to move before the Dragonite here, doesn't take it out. Luckily, Incineroar goes down to about a third of HP and Tyranitar down to just above half, but Garchomp is going to go down to that Life Orb tick. Scale Shot comes through. It's going to the Dragonite. That's not going to be nearly enough damage. There's going to have to be several critical hits here, and I just don't see it happening. That repeated Intimidate onto this Dragonite just completely neutered its damage here. Even just one hit attack earlier might have made the difference. Dragonite's defense falls, the speed goes up, but that just won't matter. Flare Blitz is going to come through. This should be enough to take out the Dragonite, and that is going to take us to game number 2. A very solid game from Collin here, but unfortunately that it is tough when you are the victor in that situation to get a good analysis of the game, because when your opponent misses several moves, it doesn't necessarily give you a perfect read. You can feel very confident about it, you can feel very good about your game plan, but if you're Collin, you might be sitting there saying, whew, we got out pretty slim with that one. Again, even one of those, even that last Scale Shot hitting, or the second to last Scale Shot, might have made the difference. Even with that Intimidate, it looked like Tyranitar got quite weak there. But at the end of the day, we have game number 2 on our hands. If you are Joseph, the question is, are you going to risk it on these missable moves, or are you going to try to go for something a little bit more safe? Is the King Gambit still going to make its way on to the battlefield? And if so, are you going to rely on the Sleep Powder to make it work? Or is it going to have to be potentially a Fake Out, some redirection? What are we going to see from game number 2? Let's get right into it. For Collin, we see a bit of a different play here. The Amoonguss makes its way on the field, as well as the Goldango, and Joseph brings in the Hisuian Typhlosion and the Jumpluff. Notably, Jumpluff can absolutely go for Tailwind here. Okay, I just saw Joseph click something very interesting. I don't know if you're going to... Well, it's locked in. This is going to be an incredible call if he gets it. Right now, Typhlosion should be the fastest thing on the field. Goldango is quite quick, but this Hisuian Typhlosion has a lot of speed to it. Goldango gets withdrawn for Collin. Are we going to see the Incineroar here again? I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to be the Tyranitar. So the Sandstream is going to be active. That's going to boost Tyranitar's defense, and you are going to have a much better time against the special attacking Hisuian Typhlosion. Collin does not switch out the Amoonguss, but we do see the Terrestrialization for Joseph here. This is going to be Terrifier, Choice Specs Eruption. I'm very interested how this does into Assault Vest, Sandstorm Special Defense, boosted Rock type Tyranitar. And Amoonguss goes for the Protect. So Collin making a pretty sweet play here. Sleep Powder comes through. It's not going to do anything into the Protect, and that is a potential read on a switch. but the Amoonguss is not going to care. The Protect is huge. So Eruption's going to do how much damage is the question. I'm very interested with all this special defense resistance built into this Tyranitar. Yeah, that does maybe 20% of Tyranitar's total health, and you know that packs quite a punch. However, right now, Collin has to be at least a little bit concerned about a Torkoal making its way onto the battlefield. Oh, we do see that Sleep Powder. Okay, there we go. Sleep Powder potentially going into the Tyranitar this time around, and Collin going for the Terastallization. We know that the Tyranitar can go into Terra Flying, but it's going to be the Amoonguss going into that Terra Water here. So this might have been what Joseph was calling before instead of the potential Protect, is that Sleep Powder going into a Terra Water Amoonguss, which now also resists this Eruption. Sleep Powder does hit into the Tyranitar, so there won't be any super effective rock type damage coming out, but we are going to have to worry, if we are Joseph, about a potential Spore from the Amoonguss. It should survive this, even if it is close. Again, this is not sun boosted, but it is quite strong overall. Yeah, Amoonguss taken down to a little bit over half HP. It's still standing strong, still feeling pretty good about its situation. Spore comes through, that is guaranteed to hit, and it goes into the Typhlosion. Typhlosion doesn't have to worry too much. It's just going to be taking some chip damage here. And now Joseph is in an interesting position. Leaf Storm into the Amoonguss is not a bad option here. Obviously, you do have to contend with the Protect, and Tyranitar could wake up at any moment. A Rock Slide would do a ton of damage. Amoonguss is going to be getting chipped by this Sandstorm quite a bit. And now the question for Joseph is, what do you want to do with this Hisuian Typhlosion? It is going to be just switching it out, going into Garchomp here. You already have the Terastallization from the Amoonguss as well, which is pretty big. So Tyranitar now has to try to deal with this, and Amoonguss avoids the Sleep Powder. Tyranitar is fast asleep. Did Collin read the switch is the question, or are we going to see a potential Pollen Puff? Spore does come through, goes into the Garchomp, and so now both of Joseph's heavy hitters that we have seen so far are fast asleep. Now, this is the difference between Sleep Powder and Spore. Sleep Powder can miss. It's usually on faster Pokemon. Spore on Amoonguss. We keep seeing the chip damage, but that Spore does quite a lot of work. We are going to see the Citrus Berry help Amoonguss recover, but honestly, if you're Joseph, that is not a bad place for you to be. We do see potential switch in here, but for Collin, this Tyranitar should be waking up rather soon. It's either going to be on this turn or the next. It's going to be a 50-50 on that, kind of, sort of. Typhlosion comes back out. It does have that Terrifier here. And again, it does have to worry about that Rock Slide. Collin swaps out the Amoonguss. It's going to trigger Regenerator, so it'll be a little bit more healthy when it comes back in. And Goldengo makes its way back out onto the battlefield. Garchomp notably cannot attack this turn. This is its one guaranteed turn of sleep. So what is going to happen with this Tyranitar? Are we going to see the Rock Slide come through? No, Tyranitar stays asleep as well. Typhlosion takes a little bit more chip damage from the Sandstorm here. He's going to be asleep for at least one more turn since he just came back onto the battlefield. Will this Garchomp wake up and get an attack off? Tyranitar and Goldengo are both grounded. They're not going to be able to fly away. And we see Garchomp wake up, only getting that one mandatory turn of sleep. Stomping Tantrum is going to come through and take out the Tyranitar, who slept the full 3 turns. Sleep giveth and sleep taketh away. Goldengo now gets to do whatever it wants to do. I'm interested to see if we are going to see the Nasty Plot or potential Make It Rain. Make It Rain would do quite a bit of damage, but you are going to have to still contend with this Garchomp on the next turn. It doesn't take out either of these Pokemon. Goldengo special attack does fall here. The Sandstorm subsides. Tyranitar is not going to be back out to boost that back up. Amoonguss can make its way out, but Collin brings in the Garchomp of his own once again. We did see that Collin's Garchomp at least outsped, and again, I don't remember if it was a speed tie or not, at least outsped Joseph's Garchomp. If Joseph is having to rely on a speed tie here, that absolutely does not feel good. Joseph does have the opportunity to bring in Jumpluff, potentially avoid an Earthquake. If it is a Dragon Claw in that slot, that feels real bad. But if it's an Earthquake, you're feeling even better. So Joseph, Jumpluff comes out. You can protect with your own Garchomp if you need to. Collin does swap the Goldengo out here, and that's going to be the Amoonguss coming back in. So the Terra Water Amoonguss, it's going to be at basically full HP. Yeah, I believe that is just outright full HP. That Regenerator doing a lot of work. Garchomp goes for the Protect for Joseph, and what does Collin do here? If there was a potential, also goes for Protect, and it doesn't, well, it fails notably, but for Collin, I feel like a Dragon Claw into the Jumpluff, or at least into that Typhlosion slot, might not have felt too bad. But now all Joseph has to do is click Tailwind and Earthquake, or at least Tailwind and Dragon Claw, and you're not feeling too bad. You do have your Typhlosion that's asleep in the back, but you still have a fourth Pokemon that Collin has not seen. So Collin, ooh, actually Joseph is swapping out the Garchomp here notably. What are we going to see come back in? Typhlosion makes an appearance back out onto the battlefield for Joseph. I believe this call is Encore onto the Garchomp is absolutely massive. Not going for the Tailwind here. Jumpluff can't be spored. Now this Garchomp is locked in to protect. Does get it off. That is absolutely fine, but you're not getting any damage out. And I believe for Joseph, bringing the Typhlosion here is a call for a potential Spore, but Pollen Puff comes through, takes Typhlosion down to 43 HP. And Encore onto the Amoonguss here will lock it into a move that is not going to be all that helpful. And so Collin almost has to start swapping things out here. Garchomp retreats. That's going to be Goldengo coming back in, but Joseph has taken quite a bit of control of this situation, unless Amoonguss doesn't even have Protect here, so it's just going to be Pollen Puff again. I don't know if that's going to the Typhlosion slot or into Jumpluff. It's going to entirely depend on what it is, and Typhlosion wakes up. Heat Wave comes through. This should do enough to take out the Goldengo, especially with the Choice Specs and Terra Fire. Goldengo goes down. Amoonguss takes about a third of its HP. We're going to see the Pollen Puff come back through here. It's a critical hit on the Goldengo. I don't know if that mattered, quite frankly. Pollen Puff coming through from the Amoonguss here. Where's it going to go? If it goes into the Typhlosion, I don't know if this is going to be enough damage to take it out. Not at all. So Typhlosion standing strong. Joseph now, all he has to do is contend with a Garchomp and a Pollen Puffing Amoonguss. That is probably the worst option that it could have. Joseph can now click the Tailwind, knowing that Jumpluff is still faster. That'll guarantee that his own Garchomp outspeeds Collin's, and that is the only threat that Collin has left. Joseph is in very, very good control of the rest of this game. Heat Wave is only really going to be doing chip damage. Well, that's a lot more than chip damage. I take it back. Never mind. Garchomp, even with the Quad Resist, goes down below half HP. That's the damage that I'm talking about here. Dragon Claw goes into the Jumpluff. Pollen Puff comes through. That's going to be a Jumpluff down. That's going to be Garchomp coming back in, or maybe Pokemon number 4 for Joseph here. But on the next turn, Typhlosion should be able to wrap this up. We do see the Dragonite in the back. I, could have taken note of that before, but I was a little bit distracted. And Garchomp makes its way back out onto the field. Can just click an Earthquake here or a Dragon Claw, whatever he so chooses. Stomping Tantrum as well, I guess, if you want to. But this should take care of the rest of this game. Joseph does retreat his own Typhlosion. It's going to be Dragonite coming back out onto the field. Doesn't want to get that self-KO stat boosted up any bit more. Dragonite will avoid this Garchomp's Earthquake. This should do just about everything here. I don't know if it'll be enough to take out the Amoonguss, and with the Protector, we're going to at least be here for one more turn. Earthquake comes through. How much is it going to do to the Amoonguss? Are we going to get over a quarter of its HP gone? I could certainly see it, but Amoonguss is tanky. Yeah, Amoonguss goes down to that. Garchomp on its lonesome for Collin here, having to deal with a potentially ice spinning Dragonite as well. This game is all but over. For Collin, I think bringing in the Amoonguss was a pretty solid idea, especially seeing what Joseph brought in the prior game. But knowing you have to contend with that Hisuian Typhlosion, having both your Goldengo and your Amoonguss here definitely is not fun. It's a difficult situation to try to manage. So you have to kind of consider, are you going to go for the Terra Flying on the Goldengo, or are you going to go for the Terra Water on the Amoonguss? If you go for the Terra Flying, I don't know if you even survive anything. So if you are Collin, what are you going to do now? Are you going to focus more on the Tyranitar, trying to get in some more damage? I could certainly see that. I wouldn't be all that surprised. Goldengo is a powerful Pokemon. It hasn't necessarily felt great in this matchup, and I think that is just Hisuian Typhlosion at work. So going into this game number 3, Collin is the one on the back foot. Gonna have to make an adaptation, but I would not be surprised if we see Joseph change things up one more time. Let's get right on into it. So game number 3, and we see the switch. Kilowattrel has made its way onto the battlefield, and Joseph has swapped back to the King Gambit. Notably, King Gambit absolutely loves staring down a Tyranitar. We see the Dragonite and the Garchomp in the back for Joseph already once again. Collin can go ahead and try to set that Tailwind up. I actually don't know if Kilowattrel or Jumpluff is the faster of the two, which could be a little bit relevant. That being said, this might just be a Tailwind versus Tailwind battle here. King Gambit does go ahead and go on the retreat. We are going to see, I imagine, Garchomp make its way back onto the battlefield. Has a great time into both Kilowattrel and this Tyranitar. Are we going to see a Terastallization? We do indeed. I don't think this is going to be a Kilowattrel Terastallization. I believe we're going to see the Tyranitar, remove that Steel type weakness, go into that Terra Flying. Now, we could see the Terra Blast here going into the Jumpluff. That should take it out in one shot, unless this is is the world's bulkiest Jumpluff, which I guess it could be. And Kilowattrel does get the Tailwind off first. Is this Tyranitar trained in any speed at all? It is, and it's going to be the Rock Slide, not the Terra Blast. Jumpluff does manage to survive. It doesn't do a lot of damage to the Garchomp, and Jumpluff doesn't flinch, gets the Tailwind up. I think if you're Collin, you were kind of hoping for that Rock Slide to at least to either KO or flinch Joseph's Jumpluff, but now Tailwind advantage is basically equalized. Garchomp notably can't fire off any ground type moves comfortably, so is gonna just be kind of relegated to throwing out Dragon Claws if it wants to attack. But this Jumpluff is not in a great spot. Even if it managed to survive on the battlefield through the attacks, Sandstorm is going to take it out pretty quickly. And we see Kingambit make its way back onto the battlefield. Wouldn't be surprised for Collin to keep seeing some more Rock Slides here, and Thunderbolt comes through onto the Kingambit. Does a decent amount of chip damage here, but Dragon Claw is going to do a lot of damage to this Kilowattrel and just outright takes it down. It's a speedy Pokemon, got a little bit of damage out, got that Tailwind set up. It has done its job. Can Collin take the rest of it from here? Terra Blast comes through from the Tyranitar. Now it's going into the Garchomp, notably. This is going to be Tyranitar's strongest move that it's got right now, I believe, and Garchomp goes down to about a third of its HP. Tyranitar, though, getting buffeted by a bit of its own Sandstorm. Now, Kingambit and Garchomp are both on the battlefield, but Collin gets a Garchomp of his own. Again, Kingambit does not like seeing this, and Collin, with that healthy Garchomp, healthy Tyranitar, you're probably feeling pretty good here. Joseph goes for a Protect on his own Garchomp. Are we going to see a Sucker Punch out of the Kingambit is my question, and that is exactly what we're going to see. Tyranitar takes like an absolute champ here. Are we going to see the Earthquake? It is going to be that Earthquake. Kingambit's going to take quite a bit here. This should outright take it down, and then Joseph is all of a sudden going to be struggling with a very weak Jumpluff and all but a Dragonite in the back. Will that be enough? Ice Spinner for the win could be it, but Collin feeling pretty good about this. This Tyranitar is just going to do whatever it needs to do. Rock Slide going to come through. Garchomp stays protected. Now, both players' Tailwind is going to be fading, I believe, on the next turn. It's going to be at the same time, so it shouldn't matter all that much. However, Joseph could potentially still get Tailwind back up with his own Jumpluff. That might be the key to victory here. If Joseph can maneuver things so that at least one of Dragonite or Garchomp are up, preferably both, and then you are able to get your Jumpluff in and get a good Tailwind up, you just might be able to win this game. Otherwise, right now, Collin is in a pretty decent spot. I don't know that Tyranitar goes down to a Scale Shot here. It should go down to an Ice Spinner. I believe both Garchomp and Tyranitar will, but will Garchomp outspeed for Collin and get some big damage off? It certainly could. Earthquake, I don't think is going to be the option here. I think it's going to be throwing out more Dragon Claws, but you do have to be careful with that against this Dragonite. If you choose wrong, Dragon Claw will be, will be blanked by the Fairy typing, or if you try to call the Terra and go for a potential Stomping Tantrum, that is going to miss if the Dragonite does not Terrasilize. We do see Joseph go ahead and swap out the Jumpluff, or swap in the Jumpluff, bringing out the Garchomp here. Collin, what are we going to see next? Joseph does go for the Terastallization. This is going to be Dragonite going into the Terra Fairy now. So if Collin went for the Dragon Claw into that slot, it is going to be blanked, but then you still have to contend with the potential Tyranitar damage. Which one is faster? That's going to be the big question. Traditionally, Tyranitar is going to be slower here. And we do see the Dragon Claw come out. It's going into the Jumpluff. Jumpluff goes down, so there's going to be no Tailwind advantage for Joseph Ugarte here. And what is this Dragonite going to do? That is the big question. Who are we targeting? What damage are we doing? Scale Shot going into the Garchomp. That is going to take it down. It's going to boost Dragonite's speed, but it's going to lower its defense, and Tyranitar is still going to be able to get an attack off. Collin gets a safe switch in for whatever Pokemon number 4 is. We haven't seen Incineroar. That could potentially be it. I don't know. Oh, man. Or it could still be that Goldango, and if it's Goldango in the back, you do have to contend with the potential Garchomp right now, but if it's a one-on-one, you might do all right. Knockoff here takes off the loaded dice. That could be quite big. It is resisted. And Dragonite does take some Sandstorm damage, but loaded dice going out means Scale Shot loses most of its potency. So now we're down to a 2v2. Garchomp and Tyranitar, or I'm sorry, Garchomp and Dragonite versus Tyranitar and a mystery 4th Pokemon here. Notably, I believe Collin does have the overall HP advantage here, and it is Goldango that makes its way onto the battlefield. Now, for Joseph, your Garchomp cannot take down both Pokemon at once. You're going to have to try to take a risk with Ice Spinner to take out the Tyranitar while also hitting a Stomping Tantrum onto the Goldango. If Tyranitar is able to survive for whatever reason, Collin is going to be in a really good spot. Dragonite goes for the protect here. What is this Garchomp going to do? Also go for the protect. I think this is smart if you're Joseph. You're going to be able to get a good read on what Collin is trying to do. It's going to be the Make It Rain coming through. A much more aggressive position for Collin here. And Tyranitar likely going for the Rock Slide, I would imagine. Just trying to get more of that spread damage. We could potentially see a Terra Blast into the Dragonite. I think that's what it would have been. Oh, Terra Blast into the Garchomp. Okay, good to know. Good to know. It does do quite a bit of damage, but this is, I believe this is a tough situation to read. I believe it favors Joseph overall just because Dragonite has that speed advantage. Gholdengo is going to go down to a single ground type move from this Garchomp no matter what, and Dragonite should just be able to use Ice Spinner onto this Tyranitar to take it out. Tyranitar survives. That's absolutely massive. Okay, Stomping Tantrum comes through, goes into the Gholdengo. Does it take it down? It does. Super effective move, not a critical hit. What is this Tyranitar going to be able to do? Rock Slide? Is that going to be it? I don't think so. I don't think that is going to be nearly enough damage. Terra Blast going through, that is exactly what you want to see if you are Joseph Ugarte. The best thing that Collin could have done there, or that Collin could have hoped for, would be a Rock Slide with a critical hit onto the Dragonite, but that is not what we are going to see. And Joseph now, all he has to do is click Extreme Speed, click Ice Spinner, click any of his moves, and that will be the end of this match. Tyranitar goes down. Joseph Ugarte takes round number 2, 2-1. That was an exciting game. That was a really fun game. That last situation in the 2v2 was pretty close. Again, if you are Collin, I think your route to victory is hoping for a Rock Slide to take out Garchomp, which it should do, and then potentially somehow get a critical hit onto the Dragonite, maybe take it out, but I don't think that that would have been enough damage one way or another. Very well played game number 3 from both players. I think Collin did a phenomenal job in game number 1 of pivoting around the, pivoting in and out the Incineroar, playing around these physical attackers that Joseph has stacked up. But Joe playing, planning masterfully over the course of the series, being able to bring the King Gambit back in under much safer conditions and get a lot of, get a lot of decent work done with it and still be able to apply pressure. Always a fun game with both of these players. And so with that being said, until next time, we'll be trying to upload daily from here on out, following along with the rest of Toronto Regionals all the way to the end. And then we're going to keep going with Regulation H content. So until next time, y'all, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.